We had an opportunity to come to the United States, and little did we know that we're going to start a business. We're going to have our children born here.
We embarked on our journey with our new family, which is the Schechter family.
He was the captain of the soccer team, then he was the captain of the volleyball team, then a captain of the basketball team.
He started off at the Mid-Island YJCC, then he went 2 years in Sprout Lake, then USY Wheels, then JNF Roots in Israel, and then he was a staff at Raman Nayak. He's a person that brings people together, and he does it out of the good of his heart. He went through the process of applying to colleges. He was accepted to a few places. He committed to going to Binghamton. We felt that it would be a good idea to take a gap year. And so he joined a program, it's called Mechina, for Israeli kids before they joined the army.
Slowly he started to build some internal conflict. Am I going back to university or am I drafting?
And he made his decision.
You don't draft an army mainly because of a culture. You volunteer because you believe it's the right thing to do, and that's what he believes.
Every time he could, he called home, and he put a lot of effort into maintaining it.
He was stationed with his team on the Gaza border. There was a lot of activity generated by the Hamas on the fence. They were throwing all kind of small bombs. They've been in the tanks working 18 hours a day. The night of October 6th, he calls and he speaks with Orna.
Omer was fairly relaxed. He said that it had been quiet on the border.
I'm checking my phone just before going to sleep. I'm starting to read reports on ground attack. So immediately I'm like texting Omer, what's going on? Talk to me. Are you okay? But we never got an answer.
A few hours later, what I'm hearing from high command, most likely he was kidnapped by Hamas.
That's the last we know about Omer. We don't know his condition. We don't know if he was hurt.
No matter what your political opinion is, why is it so difficult to see that there's a humane crisis here? This is my child. He's an American citizen. He was born here. He grew up here. Bring Omer home. Bring all the hostages home now.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been blessed enough to hear straight from our friends from Israel about their loved ones that remain held hostage. But it's been 297 days since Omer, one of 8 Americans still being held hostage in Gaza, has been seen. His parents, Orna and Ronen, have been traveling the world, making sure that nobody forgets their son, making sure that people remember that there are Americans who love Israel so much that they went over there to defend a country that they didn't have to. And we should be doing everything that we can to bring all the hostages home. Please welcome Omer's parents, Ronen and Orna.
Thank you. We are Orna and Ronen Neutra, and we are the parents of Omer Neutra, an American-Israeli citizen held hostage in Gaza in the tunnels of Hamas terrorists, almost 300 long days and nights. Can you imagine that? Almost 10 months of not knowing whether your son is alive, waking up every morning praying that he too is still waking up every morning, that he is strong and that he is surviving. Omer, which is a biblical name and means in Hebrew the first crop, is our firstborn.
He was born in New York City 1 month after 9/11. I was 8 months pregnant in the city that day and focused on getting myself and my unborn child to safety during the biggest terrorist attack on US soil. With no public transportation, I walked over the Queensboro Bridge towards home. This was unimaginable back then, and yet it happened. The streets after the attack were filled with posters of missing persons. In my worst dreams, I couldn't have imagined the scenario we've been living through for almost 10 months now, since October 7th, the biggest attack and worst day since the Holocaust for the Jewish people. The eyes and smile of my son looking at me from posters on the streets everywhere. Omer, 22 years old, was born in New York City and raised in Plainview, Long Island. He's a warm, optimistic, people-loving person. Everywhere he goes, he immediately makes new friends. He's inclusive, he's compassionate, and he enjoys bringing people together. He's a good friend to anyone who comes across him. His friends describe him as someone who instantly lights up the room. He loves sports. Growing up, he played soccer, he played basketball and volleyball. He's a great fan of the New York Knicks, whether they're winning or losing. Whatever he does, it's important for him to make an impact. The captain of his sports team, the regional leader of his youth group. Omer also loves cats.
We are dual citizens of both the United States and Israel, and so we raised our boys with love and passion for both of our homelands. Omer visited our family in Israel many times. After graduating high school, Omer was accepted to Binghamton University in upstate New York, but decided to first take a gap year in Israel. During this year, he attended an educational leadership program together with his Israeli peers. They immersed themselves in learning about the different parts of the Israeli society. They connected, volunteered, and learned about the diverse communities. Omer developed strong and meaningful connections, especially with his Israeli peer group. Although he had signed up for college, he felt that he had a choice to make. He struggled deeply on this choice. As a descendant of Holocaust survivors on both sides of our family, he knew how important strong he personally could go back home and continue his plans, but he felt obligated to support his new friends and do what they were obligated to do. So he shared in serving and protecting the country, and so he was drafted to the IDF as a lone soldier in the armed corps. In his most recent position, he was stationed on a post on the border with Gaza. His mission was to protect the residential areas along the border. We last spoke to Omer on Friday night, October 6th. In our last conversation, he indicated he was looking for a quiet, peaceful weekend after a stressful month protecting the border. We know what happened a few hours later. First responders that day, Omer and his team were already in the tank when missiles came flying in, drove into Israel. They were not aware of the extent of the border breach as they hurried to the border. As the commander of 2 tanks and a small infantry unit of Golani soldiers, Omer sent 1 tank up north along the fence, while he and his tank team went south straight into the largest breach in the region. That tank was hit by an RPG and other explosives, the driver injured and killed, and 3 additional team members, including Omer, smoked out of the tank, were later shown in a Hamas propaganda video being taken out of the tank alive. We have no other signs of life since then. 10 months. Omer turned 22 on October 14, 1 week after he was abducted. And instead of celebrating with family and friends, he was a week in captivity. We keep saying, which is true, that our sense of time has been lost, that we are stuck on October 6, in our last conversation with him before he was taken from us. This all seems like yesterday, and yet the days that we count, the milestones that pass, remind us that time doesn't stop. Not for the hostages, not for the families, not for the friends and communities. The passing of time doesn't make any of this easier. Every day in captivity, their lives is at risk. We must make sure that Omer and the rest of the hostages are released. This is urgent.
Since October 7th, we've been focusing all our efforts on advocacy on behalf of Omer and the remaining hostages. We've met with numerous politicians and people of influence, have spoken at large rallies and Congress committees with diverse groups and audiences, and have engaged in hundreds of media appearances. We are doing everything we can to make sure the plight of the hostages is not forgotten. Omer is one of 8 American hostages held in the tunnels underneath Gaza, with no sign of life, denied access by the Red Cross, no daylight, no fresh air, limited amounts of water and food, tormented and tortured. We're still not sure how many realize that during the October 7th attack on Israel, of the 1,200 murdered, 45 were American citizens. We question, where is the outrage? Women were raped and children were slaughtered. This was not merely an attack on Israel. This was and remains an attack on American values of freedom, democracy, and independence.
Right.
The remaining 115 total hostages in Gaza are citizens of 24 countries and 5 different religions. This is a global humanitarian crisis. The issue of the hostages is and needs to stay apolitical, bipartisan, and must remain as such, as we need support from all sides to make sure the pressure is on Hamas until all the hostages are home. Many prayers have been said for our son, for his protection and his release. There has been an amazing outpour of support, but Omer is not yet home, and we need our beautiful son back. We need our family to be whole again. I invite you to join me in a prayer which was written by Tzvi Zussman, who is the father of Ben Zussman, a fallen IDF soldier, for this critical time. We, the American hostages, set it together last week as we went into a meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister and the President of the United States. A prayer for our captives and hostages. May it be your will, Lord our God and God of our forefathers, that you send your light and truth to the Prime Minister, ministers, and advisors of the government of the State of Israel, and guide them with good counsel. Enlighten their eyes to accept responsible proposals placed before them in order to bring about the release of our loved ones that are hostages. Father, our King, help us to bring our captives from darkness to light, so that we all may be crowned with a crown of victory in life. And let us say, Amen.
I invite everybody to say with us, bring them home. 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 Now. Bring them home. Now. Bring them home. Everybody, thank you so much. God bless Israel, God bless America, and God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.